All right, welcome back to the Rooted Conversations podcast. I am your host, Mitch Webb, and today I have Dr. Ami Patel. She's local here with me in the Raleigh Durham area, and we are partnering to host an event, a webinar at the end of this month on April 30th. And we're going to be combining forces. She is a holistic hormone pharmacist, and we're going to be talking about fertility, the stress fertility loop, and how stress can affect couples that are trying to conceive and how nervous system regulation can be a benefit. Dr. May, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Mitch.
Yeah, it's so good to see you.
You too.
Let's get started. I was so intrigued when I first met you about the holistic hormone pharmacist.
Mm,
Um, what does that what does that mean? What does that job look like? And how did you get interested in that?
That's a great question. It's a really, I would say, a job, position, role, mission that I've kind of created myself.
Yeah.
So I do have a background in pharmacy and I am a pharmacist. The holistic part comes in because I think there is a place for not just the Western medicine, but also using lifestyle and a holistic approach to managing our health, specifically chronic conditions. Like modern medicine is great when it comes to like emergencies or pain or surgery or a lot of acute things like a heart attack or, things like that. But when you're talking about preventing those things, like preventing a heart attack or preventing any sort of acute thing from happening and managing our health long term, that's where the whole lifestyle thing and holistic comes into play. And the reason that I got into it is because of PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, which is a condition that I have, and it's the number one cause of infertility. But I'll just pause for a second for you to say something else if you'd like. But
Oh
yeah,
no, no. It's when you say holistic hormones, I immediately start thinking of two things, like hormone replacement. I think about that. That's something that I utilize is TRT, and but it sounds like the approach is more preventing or making sure that our system is working the best as possible before we have that type of approach. Is that correct?
yes, but also even if we do choose to utilize like Western medicine, it's still to get the most out of it, we still need to have that like foundation of the lifestyle because there's only so much medicine can do if like you can't out supplement or out medicate a poor lifestyle. So that foundation is still going to be there.
I got you. What are some like the low hanging fruit that people can utilize when they're coming to see you?
When they come to see me.
Like
Um,
they come in, they're like, "Hey, I've got PCOS, like endometriosis is another one I think of when you say that. I have low testosterone." And before I even continue there, are you working with men and women, or is it just women?
just women.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so if they came to you and they're saying, "Hey, my hormones are banged up," maybe they've got a test or something like that, or maybe they're just dealing with certain symptoms. Where do you start?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I do a lot of one-to-one because each person's health and treatment and approach is individualized. Their lifestyle is individualized. So I figure out with them what is like the low-hanging fruit that we can make the smallest changes with the biggest impact. So whether it's for that individual, like improving their sleep, improving their stress. Maybe they don't exercise at all, or they exercise too much. Some women may be exercising too much. Trying to figure out where we can make small changes that have a big impact.
Mhm. Do you have like a form, or is it more like building rapport, getting to know them, and it comes out in conversation? How do you assess that?
Yeah. Yeah, I do get their medical history, family history, lifestyle history, and figure it out from there. Get an understanding of what symptoms they're struggling with and what it could be associated with. Like, for example, if they're having a lot of acne, that could be associated with inflammation, rashes, things like that. If they're having uncontrollable sugar cravings, that could be related to insulin resistance. So those would be some things. If they have missing periods, trying to figure out is it because they're under eating, over exercising, what's going on there?
Mhm. Yeah, I know that hormones can change so much, and it seems like having our nutrition dialed in is so beneficial there. But what other like lifestyle factors? So nutrition is what jumps out to me at first. Like obviously, if we're eating fast food or not eating enough food, I imagine that could be a problem as well. Other than nutrition, what are some other things that you address first? I heard you say sleep.
Yeah, so we can talk a little bit more about nutrition because from my aspect, so I work with a lot of women that have PCOS. And with that, there is this whole like history of by the time women come to me, they have tried lots of different things. Many doctors have told them to just lose weight. And with that, they could be, cutting a lot of calories, over exercising. And yes, calorie cutting and exercising, like calories out versus calories in, works really well for men, but for women, sometimes it doesn't work as well, especially with PCOS, because you have to consider the hormones, things like inflammation, insulin resistance, high stress levels. So when it comes to nutrition with women with PCOS, when most of my clients that have started working with me, they have been under eating. So for me, it's to get them to a point of understanding what like their baseline is right now of calories and trying to get them to eat a little bit of more food, which is even that can be challenging because they have the mindset that, oh, if I eat more food, I'm just going to gain weight. And so that's like a whole thing we have to work through. And then getting them to eat more food, eating more balanced meals, like more protein, healthy fats as well.
So you said calories in, calories out. So you're basically saying like the diet approach that says, hey, it really doesn't matter the type of food you eat. It's all about calories. Where would you disagree on that, or what would you add to that conversation? Because I know that we can certainly lose weight by lowering calories, but it seems like it's not that simple.
It's not for women with PCOS. It's not because there's other things to consider, like foods that can cause inflammation, and that low-grade inflammation can worsen things like insulin resistance. For women having more like for women with PCOS having more protein and healthy fats, even though they have a little bit more calories, would be more beneficial because it prevents things like blood sugar spikes, which worsens insulin resistance over time.
If you had to give us like a if you had to make a standard recommendation for food to someone that's considering, improving, let's say, not perfect here, what's a meal look like, or a day of eating, or even like how do you approach that? What's like a simple way that the listeners can go, yeah, I'm doing good there, or I can make some improvements here.
I would say not skipping meals.
Mm. So
Um,
fasting is out.
It depends on, so for women with PCOS, they have a lot of insulin dysregulation. So when they skip meals, their body becomes really sensitive. So like when they do eat anything, it can spike their blood glucose and then that causes like a roller coaster for the rest of the day.
Yep.
I mean, I do think there is to an extent maybe like a 12-hour fast, like making sure they're eating 4 hours before bed, not eating at least 12 hours after that. Nothing like too extreme or intense. But yeah, to answer the first part of your question, generally, yeah, making sure like not skipping meals, having at least protein, healthy fats, healthy carbs with each meal.
So it sounds like we're trying to manage stress and inflammation here, or is it inflammation first, and stress is a big contributor to that?
They're all interconnected, which is where like the whole holistic part comes into play.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I used to work with a lot of women that had PCOS, endometriosis, and I totally get the fasting longer than 12 hours causing stress. And I remember also that more of like a low carb approach was beneficial to those type of women. Would you agree with that? Is that true?
Um, I would say so I like to focus not on restriction, but adding. So instead of like if someone is coming to me and instead of going low carb, I would shift the focus to, okay, how about we add in more protein and healthy fats? So then say they're eating like, I don't know, 3/4 cup of rice, but we're going to add in a little bit more protein, add in a little more healthy carbs, and that automatically is going to turn that 3/4 cup of rice into like maybe 1/3 or, significantly less. And so that will in itself make the meal more balanced. That will help prevent the blood sugar spike. So that is how I would approach it. Because sometimes it's the mindset part, right? Like if I give my patients like a list of things they can't do, like you can't eat carbs, you can't eat sugar, you can't do this, you can't do that. That's what they're going to focus on versus,
Yeah.
oh, well, what about all these things I can eat or add into my meals? And so I like to flip it around and be like, okay, we're adding these things in, so automatically you're going to have less sugar cravings. You're going to eat significantly less sugar that way. You can have a little bit, that's fine. And yeah, and I think like with fasting, I like to start people, like I said, lowest hanging fruit first. Once we get like the foundation, and if we need to fine tune, then okay, maybe we can incorporate some fasting. Maybe we can extend the 12 hours to 14 hours because there is some benefit to that for improving insulin resistance.
Sure. I can see that. It seems like it's almost a trade-off. Um, Meaning, are we able to burn fat? Is that something that feels good for our body, or are we more insulin resistant and it's going to cause more stress? It seems like you're kind of juggling those two things, and I see it as like a personalized approach for each person, and
Yep.
what are they willing to do, and where's their body at right now?
Exactly. Yep. And that's why like it can be in phases, right? Like starting meeting someone where they're at and improving like the foundation. And then if we need to tweak things, we can make more maybe
Mhm.
stricter recommendations, even though I hate using that word, but yes.
Yeah, well, and I like that too. Like that's when I did more nutritional coaching, I would always try to add stuff in the beginning, whether it's movement or sleep or water, and then once we get a better idea of how things are going, it's like okay, maybe we can subtract at some point, whether that's taking out the over exercising or the over restrictive diet, or pulling something out that's not serving. But it takes time to get to know someone, and like we said, everybody's so different in this work, it seems like.
Yes. And I mean, this is also like where your work comes into play, right? Like the nervous system regulation. If you are making so many changes at once, your body and mind is going to like freak out and you're
Oh
not
yeah.
able to keep up with those changes.
That's something that I'm learning about more and more. The guys that I deal with are having sensitized nervous system, and what's going on there is they see that they feel like their body is broken. Newsflash, it's not, and we can certainly unpack that a little bit too. But what they do is they see themselves as broken, that it's something that needs to be fixed, and so they instead of listening to their own body and regulating, they're looking for something outside of
Mm.
them. And then they're constantly fixing and trying to figure out what's going on. And ultimately, what that does, it leads to sensitization and symptoms, like anxiety and burnout, because we're telling the nervous system that there's a threat that I can't get rid of. So there's literally a tiger waiting at the door, waiting to eat us. And what's your nervous system going to do in that state? It's definitely not going to be ready for reproductive type
Oh,
of
yeah. It's
it's wanting to survive.
That's exactly right. Yep. And yeah, in like simplistic terms, if our body is focused on survival, the last thing it cares about is reproduction
Yeah.
because it's thinking like if you can't keep yourself alive, how are you gonna reproduce and take care of a child, basically?
Mhm. Do you see a lot of people coming in a high state of stress and fight flight, trying to figure things out and fix them?
Definitely, definitely. I mean, it's unfortunately the modern way we live now, right? Like who isn't stressed, right? And it's just we have all these tools and things and all to help us be more productive, right? We're connected 24/7 with people across the world. It's just we have to make so much effort to like have boundaries, shut our minds off. be disconnected, which is what we need to do, and make effort to be out in nature, right? Everywhere we turn, it's like trees are being cut down and houses are being built, right? It's just like, yeah, it's
How do you help people I mean, I feel like that is a wake up thing. Like if everybody is in a survival state, everything's an emergency, we're scrolling, we're medicating, we're and then we on the other side of that, even the wellness community, if they see that they want to be healthy, that looks like a lot of effort. It looks like a lot of control. To me, it feels like a lot of busy work and we're adding gas to the fire. How do you help people slow down and see how their lifestyle is contributing to their stress bucket?
that's a great question. And you said something about a wake-up call, right? Like I cannot give people a wake-up call. Usually people get a wake-up call and they come to me
Yeah.
because what, as humans, we're so good at adapting and we learn to adapt to this high level of stress,
Mhm.
whether we realize it or not. And then it leads to a diagnosis of some sort of illness, which is usually what leads to a wake-up call, whether it is infertility, based on our context of conversation right now, or something else that forces people to slow down, whether it's like a death of a loved one that they wish they spent more time with instead of just like working all the time, things like that. But there's still ways that I can help people with, slowing down. um, a lot of times the people I work with, they are like high achieving professionals working full-time job and then having careers and then trying to manage like social life. Not getting enough sleep is usually what is one of the like giveaways, right? They're just doing too much, not getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
Usually as women having a hard time saying no and overcommitting. So working on recognizing things with them that like, what is your priority? If your priority is to get pregnant in the next 6 months, then let's actually focus on that and start saying no to things that don't align with that. And if like when you become parents, your life is going to look very different. And let's start saying no to things now because not in a way that it feels like you're bitter about it or it's a sacrifice, but you have to realize like the bigger picture of this is what I want and these are the things I'm doing towards that goal.
Yeah, it sounds like it can be so damn stressful. Something that's supposed to be fun and a normal human bodily function that we do and how we all got here. And yet we've got a world and a culture that is go 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 and burn at both ends, and disrupting that just feels almost impossible. And then we're trying to wear all the hats, be the caregiver, run a business, potentially go to work. And then now we got to learn how to sleep and eat and do all these things just to have a baby. I mean, it feels like a lot.
Yeah, it does, right? And it feels so like we are causing this problem ourselves, right? Like this lifestyle that I don't know, like the societal pressure of like always overachieving and all of this stuff, right, is leading to like this increased risk or increase in infertility rates.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I know that adding pressure to a dysregulated nervous system. I mean, I immediately think of going into burnout, collapse, like overwhelm. Um, yeah, I mean, you got a lot of work on your hands. It seems like.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I mean, right now I do one-to-one work, but it is a big mission vision that I have, and I do hope to expand to group programs and things like that, smaller other ways that people can access support and knowledge and information. And, that's why I'm excited that we're doing our webinar that's coming up as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when people come to you, same thing as me. I get a lot of people that come in, they think they're broken. How do you address that? Like, I can't get pregnant. I'm supposed to be able to do this. I hear shame anytime I hear supposed. So we're shaming ourselves. We're putting pressure on ourselves. We feel like we're broken. Like, what do we? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so this is a mindset component that really comes into play. Um, I think that there's always that constant comparison that, this happened easily for this person, or look, like this person's getting pregnant, or that's happening. And we don't know the whole story of other people, and we start comparing that to ourselves. So trying to work on where your thoughts are coming from. And is it because someone made you feel that way? Is it because you're doing comparison? And I think it's what you also touched on earlier is that, listening to yourself and your own voice and your own body, because our body tells us everything we need to know. Like when we are having random things happen to us, that's our body giving us signs. Like if we start having random headaches all of a sudden, or getting like neck pain or back pain, that's your body telling you something's going on, whether it is like slow down, something like that.
Hmm.
But I try to really work on shifting the focus, that negativity around like, my body is broken, and changing that to, okay, what are the good things that your body has done for you, where you have felt that your body was whole and, healed you in a way. Other things is there's so much negativity around like women and periods. So shifting that language, because a lot of times when women start their menstrual cycle, there's lots of negativity of like, oh, well, PMS sucks, or you're just gonna have to suffer with this every month, or like so much taboo around cycles, and it's just so much negativity that has been built up for years. And then when women try to conceive and they don't have cycles, I really have to work with them on, okay, let's change your whole mindset on all the negative things you thought about your cycle and all the good things about it now, so that you feel more optimistic and positive about the cycle, because all of that plays a role, right? Like women need regular menstrual cycles and they need to ovulate to reproduce. And if you have so much negativity built up about that for 10, 15 years, like really need to work on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it sounds like we're doing a lot of the same things. When somebody comes in to see me for dealing with anxiety and burnout, fatigue, different chronic symptoms, they think they're broken too. And that's where education comes in, and understanding the biology of stress and how our physiology works. That, hey, you're not broken. Your body's responding perfectly to the environments that it's been in. And this is what it knows. And this is how it's actually protecting us. These symptoms are normal things when we don't know how to listen to our body and interpret what it's trying to tell us. I had a guy on the podcast just yesterday where we were talking about, anger would be a boundary has been crossed, that fatigue could be, I feel unfulfilled in my life, that grief could be, loss. And that he was even saying that fear is a little bit irrelevant. It's kind of a story unless we're actually being chased by something. But it seems like the body is intelligent. It is trying to communicate with us, and we can help identify these limiting beliefs that are really driving a lot of these symptoms. If we think something's wrong with us, we're broken, and we can reframe that, see all the good things that are happening, give them an action item of, hey, here's some things that you can work on in your lifestyle. We both know that can make those basic,
Yeah.
nutrition, environment, getting outside, sleeping better. I mean, you do these things for 3, 6 months, you're a different person. And
Yeah.
there's just not a lot of information out there to show that. And we can live in our own little spheres and be comparing ourselves, like you said, stewing in these limiting beliefs, and judging ourselves and putting so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect. And it seems like what you're doing here is normalizing, reframing, giving people
Mhm.
some really good tools, and eventually helping them feel more confident about their ability to conceive. Did I summarize that right?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. And the key thing you said is also 3 to 6 months. A lot of people, I mean, this is another thing. We're conditioned instant everything, right? We are just talking about the instant pot before we hit record.
Yeah, yeah,
Instant, Instagram, everything is just like
yeah.
instant, instant. And we want to see instant results, but these things with like chronic conditions, lifestyle changes, it's gonna take 3 to 6 months. Changes in women's menstrual cycle, like if you start making healthy changes and healthy habits now, it can take a few cycles to start seeing the fruits of those efforts that you put in. So, yeah, I think, for all listeners, having that patience, that 3 to 6 months, it'll it'll be worth it and
hmm
being patient with.
In a world, I call this the Amazon Prime of the
Oh
heal.
yeah.
We want it tomorrow. And if we don't, this is what comes to mind when we're talking about this. If things aren't happening, right now, how do we get someone to trust in 3 to 6 months? Because I 100% without a doubt know that these basic shifts that we're talking about make a huge impact. But how do we sell that, convince someone almost, get someone to trust that that's going to be the case when they're used to next day delivery?
So funny you said that because Amazon used to be what, 2 days and then it changed to 1 day. Now it's like you could get it as fast as 2 hours.
I don't know. That's a crazy, right?
So with my clients, I focus on wins every day and every week. So even if it's like, say someone is missing her period for like over 3 months, and so yes, the goal is to get the period back, but before that happens, we're going to focus on the little things that changes that she does notice that, okay, my sugar cravings have decreased, or I have more energy throughout the day. I have less brain fog. I'm more focused at work. I'm sleeping better. All of those things are still wins. All of those things are still progress and moving in the right direction that we want to go. So I would say that focus on those small wins and remind yourself of those because those small wins really are the big wins and they'll keep you motivated and encouraged to keep forward with those lifestyle changes.
I love that. I do that I used to do that more in like health coaching with my clients. I did this thing called, you can steal this if you want it, or maybe you're already doing it. I called it Book of Proof.
Oh,
And they have a notebook for when they work with me. At the very end, they have a little section that they write down book of proof. And every time they get a win, these signs that you're describing that lets them know, hey, I'm on the way. The evidence is piling up, especially on hard days when we have a setback or a flare in my work. Or a
yeah.
new symptom pop up and we feel like we're going backwards, where actually that's part of the process. And also part of the process is being able to zoom out and see the big picture and not judging ourselves on a day versus all of these signs that have accumulated that are showing us we're on the way and going in the right direction. I think that's powerful.
Yeah, it's exactly it. Making, and it's one thing, like you said, right? It's one thing to think it, but to write it down. So, especially when you're having a hard time, like, oh, I quit, like, I want to quit. Is this even worth it? And then you go back to your little notebook, like, oh, yeah, no, all these great things did happen. And, I am feeling better. And, you might have a little speed bump of like a little something that might make you want to quit, but then you realize that, no, I'm going to keep going.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what we do as coaches. I mean, I have it. I might have this shirt on right now. Don't let the hard days win. And having somebody that's been in our shoes, that's worked with people like us, and then having that reassurance and the evidence. Um, I think that can be a game changer for someone that's having a rough time. Speaking of rough times, how does fight or flight or being really stressed, being in a survival state, we'll call that sometimes. How does that affect the endocrine system?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, fight or flight is when our body goes into that state, it wants our brain to be on high alert, for sometimes like for example, with fasting, sometimes it's a cortisol that we makes us really alert in the mornings, even though we
Hmm.
may think that, oh, the food is like slowing us down. But anyway, side note on that. But cortisol is what plays a role in the fight or flight process. And cortisol stimulates our liver to release more glucose for our organs to function during this time. So basically, it's like your body wants you to have the most energy that it can possibly need because it thinks that like this is my last chance. I'm going to give it my all, fight this thing, or, run away. And that's a great function that we need, and it's to help us to survive. But the problem is now is we're constantly in this fight or flight state, even if we're not like, like trying to fight for our life, but we get triggered into that when we have stressful things happen, whether it's like traffic or a fight with someone or like some bad news, things like that. So when we have the cortisol release, the glucose increases. The glucose, when we have high glucose levels in our bloodstream, it stimulates our pancreas to release insulin. And so insulin helps the glucose get into the cells to function. But over time, if we're constantly in this state, like every single day, multiple times a day, then over time our cells lose that the receptors on the cells, they don't the insulin doesn't work as well. Then we start having more glucose remaining in the body, in the bloodstream. So then our pancreas thinks, oh, like maybe there's not enough insulin, so then it releases more insulin, but the insulin that's already there is just not, the cells aren't able to take it in as well, and this over time leads to insulin resistance. And all of this, when we have like the high cortisol levels, this actually has an inverse relationship to testosterone. So this leads testosterone to go down when we have high cortisol levels for men.
Yep.
And for women, this also leads to like low progesterone levels, and high insulin levels just also disrupts estrogen and progesterone, and also leads to higher testosterone levels for women, which is not what we want.
Yeah, and thanks for explaining that. It makes so much sense. And as you're talking about that, I can kind of see more how food can be such a big signal here because what helps cortisol the most? Carbohydrates, eating, right? And what raises cortisol? Uh, Caffeine, not eating, stress. And what I've learned about blood sugar issues is that it's not always food. And so we're so quick to shame carbs and shame ourselves for eating. Carbs are good. I'm someone who gave myself a thyroid issue by chronically avoiding carbohydrates, especially being someone that's active. And so we go, okay, so if my glucose is high, I just can't eat carbs, which that may not be the best bet for everyone, right? And so we're avoiding carbohydrates. Maybe we're fasting. We're trying to do that as well, but we think that we're helping out the blood sugar, but we're only driving it higher, right? And so we demonize carbs. We're stressing our body out. And what I know also, yes, we have the fight flight, the high dysregulation, the really high sympathetic activation, and eventually we can go into freeze as well. So fight
Mhm.
flight is a lot of stress, and then freeze is what happens when the nervous system goes, I can't take any more of this stress. I'm going to shut this person down. We're going to conserve energy. So you're not going to want to be reproducing in that state either, right? So our body's conserved. But here's the thing: uh, freeze can be functional freeze. We can function perfectly, and
Yep.
the way that it looks is like a duck on water. It looks nice and smooth because it's shut down. But underneath that water, those little legs are still going crazy. All that sympathetic activation is still there. And guess what that person responds really well to? Caffeine and fasting. Why? They
Mhm.
feel good. Why? Because now their cortisol is coming up, but they
Yeah.
still got all this activation underneath. And so those are the people, the women that I would say that now, this was myself included. I wake up in the morning. I didn't sleep last night because all that activation is still there. Just like if I was to fast overnight, my body's going to keep me awake. But if I'm also in a fight or flight or a freeze, my body's going to stay awake as well because it's not safe to rest when I got something chasing me. So I wake up in the morning. What do? Caffeine, exercise, fasting until lunchtime. Now my hair's falling out. I'm missing my period, I've got this belief that carbs are the devil, and I'm just like really in this cycle now. Like that seems like, I mean, is that a lot of the clients that you're working with? I'm imagining that that's them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That is them. And yes, so many of them, they're not sleeping well because they can't fall asleep. Then they run late in the morning, so they don't eat breakfast. then they're not eating until lunchtime. And then because they have not eaten for so long, they get the insulin spike. Then they
Yeah.
crash.
Yep.
2 p.m., drink another coffee.
Yep.
And caffeine stimulates our adrenal glands to release more cortisol. And so that's exactly what you're describing, that then they feel like great and energized with that caffeine, that cortisol again. And then we have that whole cycle again, more
Adenosine
insulin.
goes down
Yeah.
with that afternoon caffeine, meaning adenosine is like sleep pressure, basically. And then another thing that I would point out to the listeners, as we're describing this person who's, skipping breakfast and eating, getting a big blood sugar dump at lunch and then crashing, and then what's going to happen? I imagine they're going to be hungry at nighttime. The thing that I always talked about with my clients is, you hungry at nighttime? You know what that means? That means you didn't eat enough food today, and that's it's the same person. So, and also we need those carbohydrates and that adequate food to bring that cortisol down as well. So now we're going to bed with this massive activation that we know is going to wake us up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when the liver dumps the blood sugar, and we're just in this endless cycle. How do you help people see this? Because I feel like it's so common, and how do you break that?
It's a good question. Oh, okay. So try to meet them where they're at. If they're not able to, I mean, realistically, if they're not going to be able to make like breakfast in the morning, right? So we start with some grab and go things, whether it is like a protein shake or just some fruit, some mixed nuts, some cheese, just something that they can grab on the go. That's like one way I get them to eat something first thing in the morning,
Yeah.
before they have that morning coffee. At least they have something in their stomach. Trying to work on the evening time, like what is preventing you from going to sleep early or, giving yourself sufficient time. Speaking of like hormones and everything, melatonin is a hormone, and our melatonin does not increase or produce if we are under bright lights in front of the screen all the time. So we need to have like, it sounds silly, but like a bedtime routine, right? As kids, there's a reason kids get cranky when they don't have their bedtime routine or they're off schedule. But we think that because we're adults now, we don't need those things. But, our bodies still need some consistency with some routine, some downtime. It's so hard, especially like we're talking about, high functioning people. It's so hard for us to just switch our brain off and switch our body off. Like going from work mode and jumping into bed is going to be really challenging to fall asleep because your cortisol is still high. And so trying to get some, downtime.
That's
So
a
I
that's a big shift, dude. For someone who's dependent on dopamine hits, who's super stressed out, who's giving themselves caffeine and blue lights, and um, basically creating this pattern that's keeping the nervous system stuck in fight or flight and making it damn near impossible to reproduce. It's such a big shift, and when we can, the nervous system, it loves. Um, Repeatable, like boring routines. But that type of person does
yeah,
not like that. Like they're like, I like spontaneity. Um, I like excitement. I like watching TV at nighttime, a murder mystery before I go to bed, and I like wearing my sunglasses in the morning. I'm thinking of like zeitgeibers and light and food and movement. These things that stimulate our sleep wake cycle. Like that's a lot. It's a big shift for someone to go from dependent on the way we do things and stressed out to creating routines and sustainability in a holistic manner.
yes, and this is where that 3 to 6 months comes into play because we're not going to do this overnight. We're
Yeah.
going to start small. You can still watch TV at night, but maybe instead of hour and a half, let's cut it down to an hour.
Yeah.
Just start small that way. Want to set yourself up for success. So, picking things that we know you can achieve and working from there. That's why, like, I don't expect my clients to make breakfast for themselves at 7 a.m., but instead,
Mhm.
let's just do a grab and go. You can eat
Mhm.
it on your like car ride to work. That's sounds, it's really effective and it starts breaking that cycle. They start focusing more like better during their morning work time and they're like, oh wow, like this actually makes a difference. And now I'm not starving by the time I eat lunch. I'm not inhaling it in like 15 minutes. And
Yeah.
oh, like I am focused or I can think clearly. And it builds on that. They start feeling better. Then they're like, okay, they're eating more in the daytime. So they're not having that big meal in the evening either. So getting
Yeah.
more sustained energy, bringing in a little bit of movement in the evenings, just starting small and
Yeah.
building.
That's the best way to do it. Small changes, little bits of education and awareness, stacking the wins up that eventually add up to this holy shit moment of, oh my gosh, this actually works. That these, these tiny little lifestyle changes, not big, overt, massive shifts, that's not going to be sustainable. It's going to be more stress. But when they can start to see it, I just see them going, oh man, the proof is there, and I imagine there's like a shift or a turning point when these things start to add up.
Yeah, and the other perspective shift I like to give is like, where that person we were describing, that person didn't get there overnight either, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's those habits that maybe unknowingly we thought were healthy or whatever just ended up piling on and leading to like this downward spiral, right? So as much time as it took to get there, it's going to take some time to kind of undo some of that stuff, build in some of the healthier habits.
I get it, man. So, what about couples? How can couples work together to navigate this seemingly can be stressful time, especially when they're coming to you and they've tried everything and they feel like they're broken? How can men and women support each other in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, these lifestyle changes, they're all applicable to men and women. It's great for not just improving women's egg quality, but also sperm health. So it's really teamwork. And I think, the language is really starting to change in the fertility space that before it used to be heavily focused on just females, that if it's infertility, it's a female related issue. But there has been, things are shifting and people are realizing that there's a like 50% of infertility is related to men as well, whether it's sperm quality or anything related to the sperm shape, things like that. So, you know, taking vitamins together, just as important. All these lifestyle changes, really important. And I think, like anything as a couple, thinking of it as teamwork and just you need to do this while I'm gonna go do this instead, type of a thing.
Yeah, yeah, I could see how. I'm not I don't have kids, but I imagine it can be kind of, as the man feels like, how do I support and help? That's where I go into clear communication,
Yep.
doing things together. Feeling like I got to do this all. I feel like it's really easy for a woman to feel like I'm doing this all on mine, and the pressure is on me. And so, how can guys maybe help carry that load a little bit? What are some examples that you can think of?
Yeah, like just, working out together, going to sleep together versus like, okay, hey, let's watch this one more episode type of thing. Maybe not, doing that as often. Working on those things together. I think more important, like just thinking about the bigger vision together that like if we're going to be parents together, what does that look like for us? Like what values and lifestyle do we want to pass on to our kids, right? What habits do we want to pass on to our kids? And it's really thinking about that bigger picture and then seeing what the actions would be to get you guys as a couple. And so it's like, okay, let's meal prep together on the weekend. Even if it means that instead of hanging out with our friends for 4 hours, we're gonna have to cut it back to a couple hours so we can just prepare a couple healthy meals for ourselves for breakfast or lunch this week. And it's not, this once again goes back to the small shifts, small changes. I'm not saying, cut out all your social life and just live in a bubble. That's impossible. And that's not what I'm saying, but it's making the small changes and supporting each other. And communication is key, as you said too.
Yeah, I I think the example that I think of like an old way of doing it is like looking at your wife as, now I've got a DD for the next 9 months and she can drive me around to all my events and let me party like I'm in college and all that, and that just seems like that's not going to cut it.
No, definitely. It's not going to be great for the marriage either, Yeah.
I love what you said too. I think you said values. When my clients are dealing with a lot of symptoms and we're going to learn to do life, the things that we love with those symptoms, we do that. We choose that by looking at our values. And I think getting clear on values as a couple and how we want to show up and how we want to show up for this child that we're bringing into the world um, helps us make decisions a little bit more clearly and let ourselves off the hook and say no when it makes sense, and then understanding what our individual needs are. Maybe the guy wants to go hang out with the boys and play golf one day a week, and that's a negotiable thing that we can work on, just like going to the gym and meal prepping. It's like, hey, these are the things that I need, and these are the things that we're willing to do together. And we're going to communicate. We're going to set boundaries for our time. Ultimately, boundaries for people that are new to them can feel like we're being mean, if we've been kind of a people pleaser. But what a boundary does is allows me to feel good and safe and still stay in connection with someone else. So maybe that boundary is we're going to go to my parents' house and we're going to leave after an hour because we're freaking drained and we're not going to have a weird sleep schedule. Like the sleep is important, and so to be able to sleep and have our bedtime routine, we're gonna cut it off and we're gonna make that agreement together, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Like,
I love it. I love it. Anything else that we want to kind of so let's talk a little bit about this talk that we got coming up. It's going to be April 30th. Is it April 30th or April 31st? I don't remember.
April 30th, Thursday,
Okay. And it's from 6 to 8.
E6 to, yep, 7:30-ish, 8.
Yeah. And we're gonna put the Eventbrite link in the comments below. We're gonna invite everybody that's listening. Um, what what do you think some of our goals are for that talk? What's the message we're trying to get across to people who are trying to conceive and dealing with stress?
Um, Going into depth a little bit more about how stress is impacting the fertility for couples, and even maybe other things like how IUI, IVF can contribute to stress, how to navigate that a little bit, and then also including practical tips that you can share with us, right? Nervous system related
Yeah.
to help us move from that fight or flight to more calm and create energy and
Mhm.
self-care, holistic self-care.
And we're going to be able to give them some tips, and they're going to have some tools and things that they can walk away with that they can implement right away. And I would assume
Yep.
without feeling like they're overwhelmed. So it's like I think what we're trying to provide is like a buffet, an a la carte experience that's not like too rabbit holey in any area, but like, hey, here are some things, some ideas, some tips and tricks that you can be utilizing, and your job is to ultimately pick one or two and see how that goes for you. What are some tools that you hope people walk away with?
I really hope and encourage people to join as a couple and then walk away with things that they can talk about that they want to implement together. That's what I'm really hoping can
Mhm.
happen.
When the couple is working together, instead of one person feeling like all the pressure is on them, what are how the different outcomes?
I think that it builds more connection between the couple as well. And, it's not just like the pressure is on one person, but it's that, we're approaching this as a team. This is something we both want, and your actions also show that you want this and you're interested, versus like you say you want this, but your actions aren't supporting, the changes that we need to make. So yeah, I think the actions really show the commitment as well that, hey, no, I do want us to build a future and a family together.
I love it. What type of success rate are you seeing with individuals and couples that are going through this type of approach from when they come in? It sounds like kind of their hair's on fire. They feel like they're broken and they're trying to conceive. Like, what types of outcomes or turnarounds do you see, and how long does it take?
Yes. Minimum requirement is the 3 to 6 months. And then after that, some people, they may choose to continue working with me if they want more support or more accountability after, whether it's up to 9 months or a year, just depending on how quickly things happen or how much we need to undo and do again. But yeah, I mean, I've helped women with coming off of things like GLP-1s, which they can't be on for at least 2 months before pregnancy, spironolactone, which is often used for things like acne, but that can cause harm to the fetus, so that has to be stopped, and birth control, coming off of those medications, getting cycles back, and getting pregnant naturally.
I love it. Sounds like you're really doing a lot of heavy lifting and helping some of these people that otherwise would be so overwhelmed in this process. I think it's you know, such a service that you're providing for people in this particular circumstance of stress and trying to conceive.
Thank you. And actually, we didn't get a chance to touch on this, but this all started because like I have PCOS and it took me three different doctors, 10 years to get diagnosed. When I got diagnosed, I was just told take birth control. And despite finishing pharmacy school at the time, like we learned hardly like nothing about birth control or PCOS. And I like blindly followed that advice for 7 years. Then after that, even when my symptoms came back, like acne, hair loss, unwanted facial hair growth, uncontrollable sugar cravings, the only solution I was given was metformin. And like just and I was married at that time and we were thinking about having kids. And like at the age of like 31, I was trying to figure out like when I'm ovulating, what my menstrual cycle is supposed to be like after coming off of birth control. And I just felt so like alone in that and so much shame that we talked about, right? Like, oh, why is like my body not doing this thing that it's supposed to do apparently? And I just hated feeling that way. And I was like, I can't be the only one feeling this way. And that's how I started just sharing my journey and talking about it. And over time, women started reaching out to me for help. So that's how I got to where I am today. But that's what drives me as my mission and vision to help women go through
I,
this.
I appreciate you sharing that. I love a good pain to purpose story, and I think it makes it so much more impactful for the people you're working with when you can say, "Hey, I've been in your shoes. I know what it's like, and this is why I created this work, and it's, this the passion and the purpose behind it." I think that really shines through. So I appreciate you sharing that, and I would love to wrap things up by letting us know, where we can find you, how we can get in touch with you. And then also one last time promote the event coming up on the 30th or 31st? 31st?
Thursday, April 30th.
30th. Got it. Cool. Yeah. So yeah, where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm most active and up to date on Instagram. My handle is holistic.hormones.pharmacist. I have lots of free resources, also previously recorded episodes on like a podcast and YouTube channel as well that I have, and all that can be found on my website, www.dramipharmacist.com. And that's DRAMI
Beautiful. We will put all of that in the show notes so people can reach out if they're resonating with your message. Thank you again for coming on the show, and for the listeners, if you've made it this far, please give us a like or a follow. We love comments and questions below. If you're in the Raleigh Durham area, we'd love to see you on April 30th from 6 to 8. Zoom link will be in the comments below. There's a Eventbrite where you can sign up as well, and I'm wondering, Dr. Me, any last words before we hop off? Anything that to the listener that feels like they're resonating with this message? Is there any closing remarks that you'd want to let them know?
Well, it's a virtual event, so anyone in the world can join the event, and share it with anyone who you think would be interested in learning about this. Any final words? I think, to wrap up what you were saying earlier and what I have been touching on as well is, trust yourself and listen to your own body. That's always everything we talked about disconnects us from that, right? Like the technology, the stress, the pressure, it all disconnects us from that. But the answers are really within us. So, really taking that time to slow down and connect with your body and yourself and your mind again.
Well, I'm gonna definitely support that. You are the medicine.
Yeah, yep, we are the medicine. That's right.
That's right. All right, girlfriend. It was great seeing you. Thanks for coming on, and we'll see everybody on the 30th from 6 to 8.
Yep.
Bye bye.